Great gifts for Dad? We've got them, and they're up to 60% off at Nordstrom Rack stores now.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
They've got the best gifts.
Gotta show Dad some love.
Snag amazing deals on Father's Day gifts from Cole Haan, Calvin Klein, Vince, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
McCormick knows unbeatable flavor starts with the right spices. It's why we created Flavor Sealed. So anytime you peel back the seal of McCormick herbs and spices, you can be confident they will pack the same amount of flavor as the day they were packed. The kind of flavor that brings out the best of your favorite recipes and keeps everyone coming back for seconds, or maybe even thirds. McCormick, Flavor Sealed for unbeatable flavor.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Be Fierce and Try podcast, formerly the Be Fierce Multisport podcast. I have with me today a very special guest, Mr. John Lesser, who is also my fiance. We're going to talk about spectating, not just Ironman races, but races in general. John has spent the last, 2 years becoming essentially a professional spectator. He has followed me and accompanied me to many races in many states, mostly on the East Coast, but not entirely, and has followed me, traveled with me to both coasts and 2 other countries outside the United States. So is it only 2? I think it's just 2, right?
So far, 2.
Yeah. So I think, because you were at Nice last year with me where John proposed at the finish line. We talked about that on a couple episodes, but that was a very special finish line. And, you also were with me at the Montreal Marathon, which I think was the first time you'd been out of the country, right?
I've been to Canada before, but I mean...
All right. So I was wrong. But it's the first time you're outside the country with me. So that's all that matters. All right. We're going to talk about spectating 2 different ways, right? So our listeners kind of cover mostly Ironman type events, triathlons, which present an interesting spectating challenge because they can be very long events, like in the case of a full Ironman. They can also be very short events, in like a sprint, but also, we both do a lot of the Disney events, and, you've spectated me numerous times on mostly the marathon, since you haven't yet leveled up to marathons, but mostly the marathon, right?
Oh,
I think
that's a big number to double. I mean, going from 13.1 to 20.
Hey, you know how it goes, right? If you can do a 5K, you can do 10K. You can do 10K, you can do half. You can do half, you can do full. So, essentially, whatever distance you can do, double it. And you can do that one too.
Yeah, but then that means if you can do a 5K, you can do a marathon.
I mean, that is the logical conclusion, right? If A and B, then B and C, then C and D, then A equals D, right?
Yeah, but you got to have that shirt where it says, if found on ground, please stop Strava.
I think it's if found on ground, please stop Garmin, not Strava. And, the one that goes with it is if it's not on Strava, did it really happen? Every time I meet an athlete who doesn't put their stuff on Strava, I kind of look at them like,
Yeah, it's like Facebook official.
Yeah. I'm like, you're not on Strava. What's wrong with you? But seriously, okay. So Ironman events that you've come to, or triathlons, right? I've done sprints, Olympics, halves, fulls. What is your favorite distance to spectate?
That's a tough one. I think it depends on actually the layout of the course, because depending on how it's laid out can dictate where you wind up. So
All right.
I could see you multiple times on a course. I could see you maybe once on a course, depending on where it's laid out.
All right. So that's interesting, right? Because I think the same is probably true for run events, but they do tend to be a bit shorter. And I think what you're saying is depending on how the course is set up, it dictates how much time you need to find a way to occupy yourself between seeing your athlete, right?
It's not even a matter of occupying myself. It's a matter of finding the next spot to go to, having enough time to get there. So it's really about, with you, it's knowing how fast you are in your different disciplines. So then I can figure out how much time I have to get from point A to point B or C to D or wherever I'm going. Like with your swims at Texas, I know how much time I have to get from the starting line down to where I can actually see you and spectate and then even catch you coming out of the water. So
Texas was a bit unusual, right? Because
everybody complained about that one. Everybody said that the swims were slow. And
yeah, I have my own thoughts that are not favorable for the course itself, but because it did feel like swimming through cement. And I think like the field on that day was generally slow, which was kind of weird, considering that there were like multiple records broken.
Yeah.
But I mean, the course itself, it's just, there's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of a lollipop shape.
No, that course is actually quite a spectator friendly course.
And like along the canal, I mean, ignoring the fact that canal is like 5 feet deep and kind of gross.
Yeah.
You could potentially like walk the path spectating your athlete while they're in the water, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I did. I was able to walk the canal, and when you're spectating, just because you're spectating your athlete doesn't mean you shouldn't watch anybody else, but you can catch all the pros and see everything. I find it to be quite fortunate that I happen to know your swim stroke, so I can pull you out of a field.
You mean when you have a bunch of people in the water with the same colored cap, and generally since most of us have like a swim skin or a wetsuit on, which generally are black,
you have to learn it by stroke.
Yeah.
Either that, or you have to have somebody that is very excited and ready to bounce around and dance just before she gets in the water.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What race was it that had the announcer tell me to stop bouncing so much? Yeah, I forget. It wasn't Montreal.
Bounce around and dance at the start of every race, though.
Yeah. Okay. Which race was your favorite to spectate?
Are we talking
just in general? Like of all the races you've come to, which was your favorite as a spectator?
As a spectator,
I think I know the answer, but I want to see.
I've got a few favorites. I don't know if I have a single favorite. It's like telling me to pick my favorite car. I can't pick.
All right. So if I was an athlete and I'm saying, hey, I'm going to I can do one event, and I want it to be an event that my family is going to get to see me and enjoy the race, right?
Mm-hmm.
And enjoy seeing me compete against myself. What race would I choose?
Ooh. Well, to see you and to have the most interactive time, I still say Montreal is one of my favorites.
Montreal. And for our listeners, tell us about Montreal.
Montreal was very cool. The big thing is you got to scout the map and the course ahead of time. And it just so happened that with Montreal, the course followed the path of the metro line, and it was a single train. So the course just was straight out and back, and you could just see everybody start up on the metro, go down a few stops, get out, and then it's right there on the main road. So you see everybody go by, you watch your athlete, and then hop back on the metro, go another couple stops, and keep your way through. That works for the majority of the time, right up until the point where you have somebody that's so fast that they actually beat the train.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I mean, that was pretty cool, right?
That was a very cool race because, there was only one spot where I actually had to go out, and I think maybe it was 6 or 8 blocks from the train station over to where the runners were going by.
Yeah, I mean, the Montreal Marathon follows like the same kind of pattern that a lot of other marathons follow. Like Philadelphia, was it Brooklyn? A few others I've run kind of follow the same pattern where like the first half marathon, the first half of it is like really awesome and like really, fun and lots of things to look at. And, you get to see like all the like touristy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half is like a long out and back that's just super boring.
Yeah, I kind of feel that with the Philly half when I run it. Like once you get out of the city, then you're just like out, and there's there's a certain point where you're trying to click off miles and you're like, yep, they just put it here to add mileage, and you look up for a second.
Oh, come on. On the Philly half, you just have that one loop around the park. The rest of it's
exactly
fine.
where I sat there and I looked up. I'm
Yeah,
like,
the rest of it's fine. The marathon though, like, you get a little extra up there near Please Touch Museum, which is kind of neat. It's a little treacherous because usually it's frozen the night before, and sometimes the ground up there is a little wet and a little frozen and slippery. But yeah, like the second half of that race is like, ooh, we have a park. We're going to do a 1.5 mile loop around it.
You were running that, and I was with Addison. We were watching you, and you were freezing cold at the beginning, and then you found us on the course, and you were handing off stuff like gloves and all
I gave you
stuff.
my gloves, my arm warmers, and my hat.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like 32 degrees or 34 degrees at the start, and it was a little windy. And then once I got moving by the 10K mark, I was like, oh my God, I'm so hot. And I had stuffed them in my back pocket and like, hey, for all the athletes out there, like, oh, position your athlete, strategically so you can hand clothing off to them, which of course in an Ironman event would get you disqualified. So we shouldn't do that because that would be considered potentially outsider assistance.
Another fun one I wanted to tell everybody is I've had a few people, like especially at Disney races, I'd spectate and people are like, how do you know where she's at? How can you possibly know? And I'm looking at the app and I have no idea. Like, it says they're supposed to be here. It's a guesstimation at best is what the app says. But when I tell them that, at the time you ran with an Apple Watch, and just have an athlete share their location, and you can just use the Find My, and you'll know exactly, where they are roughly, and it helps with timing and location. And it's another.
I still sometimes run with my Ultra. I kind of go back and forth between the Ultra and the Garmin. I have very mixed feelings on the Garmin.
Other than the fact that it's always negative.
Well, I mean, yeah, like the Ultra tells me how awesome I am.
Yeah, and the Garmin is never positive. And
the Garmin tells me how much I suck and how everything I do is unproductive. I do love it when you get on the bike and it tells you your stamina, and it tells me that I've got like a stamina of like 20 miles, and then I knock off a century and a half. It's like, haha. And then at the end, it's like unproductive. Recovery time, 72 hours.
Yeah, they should have like the Debbie Downer kind of.
Oh, I think it comes with that installed by default.
It seems to be.
Yeah, it does seem to be. But no, I go back and forth between watches because, I have the Garmin because a lot of my athletes have a Garmin, and, I want to make sure that, I know how it works so, that I can better advise them on, how to do different things in their equipment, like download their training plan from TriDot and use it and make sure that it uploads back up. Where like the Apple Watch is a bit easier on some of that stuff.
Yeah,
but
so,
I mean,
from a spectator bias, I'm more for the Apple Watch at that.
You're more for the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
I know there's
either that or being able to put an AirTag on your athlete somehow.
Yeah, the problem with an AirTag though is you need someone with an iDevice.
I thought about that though, but if I played the odds and you have all of the spectators that are watching the race, the odds are.
So on the run it would work, but on the bike probably not.
Probably not. You're moving too fast.
Right. And on the bike we're generally not allowed to have phones, or if you have it with you, it can't be in use. So I suppose you could have one in like your back pocket, but honestly, why would you? Unless you have a legitimate need.
Yeah, you'd have to hope that the police officers that are out on the course kind of directing traffic have an iPhone.
So from a tracking athlete perspective, what you're saying is, if your athlete has like an Apple Watch, and I think, Garmin can do something similar with their track functionality, is you can get somewhat real-time updates, but it applies probably more to road races, foot races versus like a triathlon, unless their watch has cellular like the Apple Ultra, right? Because like Garmin, most of them don't have cellular, and they need that connection to the phone, and where most of us are not bringing a phone along with us, so the track functionality is not as useful there. And same thing if you're using just a regular Apple Watch and not an Ultra, doesn't have some capability, so that wouldn't work. But like Ironman, I feel is different because there's so many timing mats that you get pretty regular updates versus like your average run that might have one like every 5K.
Yeah, you do have more timing mats on there, which is very helpful from spectating, just because you can, I mean, if you pay attention to the sport and you watch how people are, you really get a feel for, how somebody's doing during their race when you seeing the times click off between different mats. I can see you come out of the water and I was like, okay, I see the time. Like, that's about what she expected. She's feeling good. Okay. And then, when you hit the bike and you hit the first timing mat, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily familiar with the course and, the elevation changes in those first couple mats and everything. But seeing your speed, what you're carrying and your pace and everything, you get an idea. I was like, okay, well, she's feeling good off of the swim. She's shaking out her legs a little bit. And then, the next couple mats, you'll see what happens when finally your athlete settles in and starts clicking things off and how they're really feeling.
Yeah, I'm a triathlon coach. And, when I go to these events, I often will, sign up for, time as a coach in the try out tents. And, I particularly like doing, the Ask a Coach session for the first timers, which you get kind of two people. It's like you get the first timers, right? First time to that course or first time altogether. But you also get a lot of family members. I've had so many questions as a coach on like, how do I spectate?
That's a good question. I feel like spectating you need to do a little bit.
All right. So from a spectator perspective, as a coach, I get a lot of family members of athletes asking like, how do I spectate a race? And, there's a couple of like questions buried in there because like in people's heads, like on a half or a full Ironman, they're looking at the total distance and like, oh, it's such a long distance. I have all this time. And, like at Chattanooga, right? It's a 70.3 we did. And I had a few people ask me, they're like, well, can I like drive and like see my athlete in a few places on the course? I'm like, maybe. But if everybody did that, then the course is going to be full of cars.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the course and kind of how tight the loop is. Chattanooga is a good example. Chattanooga, you can spectate and you don't need a car for Chattanooga. You just have to, you have to be on your game to know where you're going and which way you need to be.
Right. And like in a 56 mile bike, unless it's point to point, right? If there's only one transition area, it's going to be either an out and back or a loop, right?
Yeah, you have to really look at your straight shots as a spectator. So, when you're looking at, try to, like, what I do is I set up like, okay, I get used to the maps and I do my homework, like usually on the train, sometime going to or from work, and I'll sit there looking at things and I'll say, okay, the transition area is kind of like base because you're going back to transition. You're coming out of transition, you're going to transition. So you have to figure out, okay, well, if they're going this way and the course is marked off, okay, they've got 6 miles before they hit this turn over here. And if I take a straight shot to go that way, well, I can make it in X amount of time and they've got to cover 6 miles. So you can kind of, play that game to get to cross the tangents.
That's kind of what I've been telling some of these families is like on the run course, if you know your general speed of your athlete, then you can kind of figure out what you can and can't do, right? Like if your athlete is running
we need to know your athlete's speed.
Yeah, if they're running at like 14 minutes a mile,
Well, yeah, it's one thing if they're running 14 minutes a
Right.
mile, but I mean, if you're sitting there trying to track the pros, I mean, we were watching them
Right.
we were watching one of the races. Who was it? I think it was Kat Matthews. She was clicking off like 654s religiously through the whole race. And it's like, well, you'll never be
What
able
I
to
would
catch
give
her.
to have more than 2 miles under 7. But yeah, no, that was the point. Because like there, I said, well, you can spectate in this one spot. You can see them kind of before they go over that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you can spectate at this other spot when they come over the other bridge and then move back because you've got enough time. But on their second loop, you can't see them at the end of the bridge because their next stop is the finish line.
Right. There's that part you have to keep in mind too, is where they are and what mile marker they're at and how long it's going to take you to get back to that finish line. Because I mean, obviously as a spectator, you want to see your athlete cross that finish line. That's the whole point, right? That's the culmination of everything. And you don't want to miss that. I mean, if you have to forego, a stop, like, the last stop or something, like, it's not something to be upset about. It's, that's one thing that I definitely have to say is like, don't get discouraged if you can't see somebody at a particular stop. Just suck it up and like, okay, well, we're gonna hit the next stop. We're gonna go to this spot here.
Okay, so, say I'm signing up for a new race, one we've never done before, because like at this point, we're kind of repeating some races, and
Yeah.
you have some learnings from the last time,
Right.
but. So like we're gonna do Marbella in November, right? It's a 70.3, for the World Championship. We've never been there. I've never even been to Spain, much less raced there.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you looking for to decide like where to set yourself up to spectate?
Well, my first stop is always the athlete guide. I'll read through that a couple times, so at least I'll get an idea of the events and what's going on.
And hopefully the swim start is shown in the right spot.
That was a good one. That was Texas. Transition was like in the middle of the river or something. It was a couple streets weren't marked. Yeah, that was once I figured that out, which was in the middle of your race, actually, in the middle of your bike. I was looking through and I was trying to figure out. I was like, why isn't this here? I was like, wait a minute. And then I brought up maps and I was like, oh, you didn't mark these streets and this isn't even where it's supposed to be. So once you figure that kind of thing out, but that was the first time that actually happened where the transition wasn't where it was marked on the map, which was very interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. So you start in the athlete guide. What are you looking for?
So athlete guide, what I'm doing is I'm looking at, transition to see, is there multiple transition stops? Is it a single transition area that you're going to be going back to repeatedly through the day or what? That's the first stop. So that's my normal beginning. And then from there, I figure out, okay, where are you coming in? Where are you going out? And then from that spot there, I'm just like, okay, follow where the bike course is and see where your quick tangents are, and then try and get an idea of like, okay, well, this is, supposedly 2 blocks over from here or 3 streets over from there. Try to get a gauge on, what that actual distance is. I mean, because for you, it might take, 6 miles for you to get to that point. To me, it might only be a half a mile or a mile. Well, depending on what section of the race it is, I could cover that mile before you cover the other 6. Hopefully. I had a train and I didn't beat you in Spain, in Montreal. So, yeah.
Yeah, but, you have to get to the train, wait for a train. And
the trains were actually good. And the fun part about it though is like, even with a mess up like that, we're still talking about it. We have a great story about that.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, how many athletes sit there and is like, yeah, I beat the train.
Hey, well, I was faster back then than I am today. So, okay. So you got the athlete guide and you're picking out your points. What are like the must see moments in the race that like, if you didn't see it, you already talked about, got to see the finish line. What else is in there?
My favorites to see are actually swim exit, because then
we all look like we just died.
no, it's a gauge for how you're feeling. It's like, is it relief? Is it like, ready to go kind of thing? Like, how focused are you? Some people, you have, it's very entertaining, even if you don't watch just your athlete. So you have like the pros, they're like very serious, very, like focused, laser focused, like, there could be something going on, they'll never notice. And then some of them are like, they're happy. They're like all, and then, you stay long enough and you have people getting out of the water and they're going to kiss the ground. They never thought they'd get out of that water. Which, I mean, you tell me to swim 2.4 miles, I would be the same way. I'd need a boat to pace me to get me out of that water.
I mean, it's funny. I find the same on the run, less on the bike, but, the swim definitely. It's like, it doesn't matter what the distance is. There comes a point where you're like, are we there yet? It's like, on a 5K run, obviously I can do a 5K.
Yeah.
And, in a 5K or a 10K, I'm reasonably quick. But like at like mile 2, I'm like, are we done?
Yeah.
Are we there yet?
I've been there too.
I'm over this.
I've been there too. And to me, it really depends on like the weather sometimes, like the heat, sometimes the way that the temperature and the humidity spike. Like, yeah, I'm ready for this to be over.
I see, I'm really consistent because like in the 5K at like the 2-mile mark, I'm like, that's when I'm like, all right, can we just get this over with? And in a half marathon, at mile 9, I find in a half to be the hardest mile because like that's where I'm like, okay, all right, are we done? Like I'm most of the way there. Can we just like get this over with?
Yeah.
Right. But then on a full, I don't feel that way until like, I don't know, mile 19 or 20. Because like in a full, the halfway mark is like, all right, we've got less in front of us than behind us.
Yeah, I've had that feeling in Disney running the half, and it's probably like you said, like 8 or 9. It's like you're running down the highway. You're, the sun. I mean, to me, when I'm there, the sun's already up. So,
well, that's because you're slow.
I know I'm slow. I tell you all the time. I'm not going to be as fast as you, not going to be as pretty as you, but I'll get there. It's just going to take me a little extra time.
I mean, that is one of the things I appreciate about the early start times at Disney and most of the like Ironman events is
missing the intense searing heat.
Well, in a full, that's less possible because most of us are just kind of hoping to finish while there's still daylight. But when you got like 4:30 and 5 a.m. start times, you get to enjoy, at least part of your race before the sun is overhead. I know everyone at the Disney races complains about the start times, but I'm like, two advantages of those start times. Yeah, you don't get as much sleep or you have to go to bed early, but your race is done before breakfast.
Yeah, it is cool to do the Disney races that early because I mean we've done races and then went back and rope drop parks.
Yeah, the only race there that I can't rope drop the park on is the full marathon.
Yeah.
Although technically, I guess we are rope dropping the park because we're in the park before it opens.
Yeah, technically.
So like just saying.
Yeah.
But back to spectating.
Yes.
So okay, so your must see is swim start, swim exit.
Yeah, my must is swim starts and swim exits. Sometimes I can't do the swim starts because I'll never make it back in time for swim exit. Like Chattanooga last year, the one that didn't have the swim canceled.
I don't think Chattanooga. I don't think spectators are allowed to swim start.
They're not allowed on that transportation bus.
But you can go there.
I mean, if you can get up there, you can get there. The problem is getting back in time. Because at that point, I've got to do surface roads where you've got the straight shot going right down the river.
Yeah, with a theoretical current assist. But
I don't know. That's
like Happy Valley. Happy Valley it's a 70.3, but it has two transition points. T1 and T2 are in different spots.
Yep.
Right. So you swim in the lake, then your bike is at T1 that you dropped off the night before. Right. And then your run gear is at the campus 50 some odd miles away. And, that you dropped off the morning before. And, as a spectator, there's been, 2 years ago, there was challenges for spectators getting from swim start to
Yeah, I mean, hearing that type of thing, that's one of those points where it's like you might have to forego the swim start and then catch the
and when
rest.
I did Happy Valley, that's what you did, but and it
Mhm.
turned out that they had improved the congestion problem.
Yeah.
I don't think it was completely gone, but it had been
Yeah, well, when you did
significantly
it, that was their second year.
right. Yeah, growing pains. So we'll see what the feedback from this
Yeah.
year is. But okay, so what about
So
like transitions? Is that like a must see? Because it seems to me like that would be a boring thing.
I happen to enjoy transitions. There's a lot of energy always at the transition areas. I mean, I know like when you're bike in, bike out, like, it's very slow because you have to walk the bikes out and you have to walk the bike back in or run them back in. You have that
I was
mountain
going to
descent
say, I
line.
hope you're not walking the
But,
bike in and out.
But you do have a lot of energy there. So there's a lot of people there. There's, they're really ramping up the energy, and you find a lot of people that are just very, very enthusiastic. Like you see some, like, people have funny signs, people are dressed up, and, you get to see a lot of people go through there. Like you can catch like, all the pro leaders coming in, and, and it's a great spot to spectate and catch, everybody, like, all the big names are there. So, if you sit there and hang out long enough, you'll see them. Sure. Yeah. So it's a great spot.
So, you talked about all the must see places. How do you navigate the course?
Navigating, again, that's where I always go back to that athlete guide and get myself familiarized with the maps, because they publish the maps in there. I'll take screenshots of those on the phone, so that way I have quick reference points instead of having to page through all the different pages through the day. And I'll have my spots picked out where I want to go, keeping in mind like how many laps there are on a race, like, some are 2, some are 3, and then looking for those little bump out sections where it's like, it's like off to the side, and then there's like an out and back over here, or off to this side and there's an out and back over there. So, being able to bounce from one side to the other over there, I could pick you up 2 times over there, and then I can pick you up 2 times over at another spot, like Hayden City, Florida. I can see you had there's an out and back. It's on the far side. I forget exactly what the mileage is, but it's like it's a 2-lap.
Yeah,
I see you go and do a out and back one way, and then you go out and back on another way, and I catch you on both of those, and then I can make it back over the transition and catch you on the far side, because you have a whole other loop that you have to make, and I can just make a straight shot right over to the other end of that.
It's very boring.
Yeah, that's through
it's like in a development. Like,
it's a small residential area, but there are people that go out there and they try to cheer and everything, but it's...
Oh, yeah, that's one of the courses that has people pretty much the whole length. Like the first like mile and a half or 2 miles of the loop is along a pretty busy road, and the run is actually on the sidewalk. And that's the one where like you just did this bike, and they managed to find every hill in freaking Florida and put it on the race. Because like Florida is flat, right? We all know this, right? It's like the first landmass in the country that's going to be underwater, when all the glaciers melt and everything, right?
That's why I find that place very entertaining, because when you picked that one to do that first time, we were looking at the elevation profile and it lied. It straight up lied and is like, yeah, it's flat. And then
it's not,
and
though.
then
It's
we
like
went there,
2,000
and
feet.
you were out on the bike, and I was talking to one of the volunteers, and she was directing traffic and everything, and you get to talking, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I've done this course, and I've volunteered at this course a few times and everything." And they changed it over the couple years back, whereas the start for biking, like people were popping chains and before they would even leave, and they find every hill. Like that's where I heard her. She's like, yeah, they found every hill in Florida and they put it on this course. Yeah. And I remember that was that was the year where, you know, it was your first year and we thought it was flat. And I was like, oh boy, Jill's going to have an interesting day.
Yeah. I discovered very quickly that it wasn't flat, and that the athlete guide that year may have misrepresented the flatness of the course.
Very diplomatic, to put it that way.
But
may have misrepresented.
Right. But so, like, in a bike like that, the bike is a loop. So you, at minimum, have 2 hours between T1 and T2.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Very few people are going to be faster than that, if anyone. Yeah. Right. And, you know, then that run course, the first like 5K of it is uphill. It's not fun.
Right.
Like the second half of the loop is fine, but the first half of the loop is like uphill, and it's pretty steep. A lot of people lock that because it's so steep. Mm-hmm. So like the run, you know, I get what you're saying. You know, you position yourself in a bunch of places. But the bike, like you really can't spectate.
Yeah, I mean, as a spectator for Ironman stuff, you pretty much have to accept that it's rare that you're going to be able to catch somebody on the bike.
Right.
That's
so what do you do? You know, Lake Placid, right? So it's a 2-loop bike course. Unlike Texas, where, you know, you get to see a start and then 4.5 to 9 hours later, you see us finish.
Well, I caught you at that one spot at the out and back.
Yeah, there is the short out and back.
Yeah,
it's only a couple miles.
It was. I remember it was quick because if you don't have your bearings right, you don't get to catch your.
Yeah, I want to say that one's like
you'd at least catch them back.
Yeah, it's like a 5 mile out, 5 mile back, and then you got like 7 or 10 more miles until you hit the highway, and then you know, the highway is, you know, it's just kind of 21 miles each way, and then do it again. There were people on the highway though at Texas.
Yeah, there, and from what I've seen, you know, you talk to other spectators and stuff that are local and everything, and there are people that go out in cars and they'll find a spot and they'll pick out their places and everything to spectate and watch everybody out there. But I mean, yeah. But if you're from out of town, I think for just the bike in general, you kind of have to forego being able to see your athletes beyond bike out and bike in. I mean, that's a rarity to be able to catch them somewhere else.
So the question is, because I've had this question asked of me a few times. It's like, okay, so you got, say, 6 hours, 8 hours, assuming that we're not talking like the front of the age group or the pros,
right?
You know, you have several hours on a full,
right,
and you know, still a few hours on a half, where, you know, between sightings of your athlete, what do you do with yourself?
What do you do? That's always a great question. Me personally, I watch the race. I see everybody that, you know, that's going by. Like, I mean, you have this incredible exhibition of, you know, people pushing themselves to the limits, and you can catch the pros, you can catch, you know, your everyday person. And, you know, what I like to do is, I mean, you've seen it. I'll go through and I'll see like who's on the pro list, who's racing. So, you know, cool. Taylor Knibb, Kat Matthews, cool. Let's put those in the athlete tracker and stuff. And, you know, it's, you know, you have 8 hours. Okay. But, you know, you watch the men's race, you watch the women's race, you meet some people and you talk to them about, you know, what possessed you to get here? Like, you know, how did you pick up this stuff? So, you know, it's a good time. It's a really, really great energy. And it's one of the big adrenaline rushes. I think the environment is like a party, and it's, I mean, it's up there with, you know, any other kind of racing. And, you know, we've done other racing like drag racing, and, you know.
So what is your favorite thing that you have seen or witnessed on a Ironman course while spectating, you know, waiting for your age group athlete to finally finish that long ass bike?
My favorite thing, that's an interesting question. I mean, there's all different kinds of stuff that I could pick there. I mean, there's entertaining signs.
I mean, you saw at Texas this year, you were there at the very spot.
Oh yeah, I was
in the
right
moment
there
when
when
Cat
Cat
Matthews
passed
passed
Taylor. Yeah,
Taylor, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah. I was
that's got to
positioned
be
just as.
memorable.
Oh, that was a great spot. I mean, it was right there. It was near that one loop before you went back out on the canal. I saw Taylor coming around the corner, and then I saw Cat right there behind her. I was like, she's going to catch her. This is the lap that she's going to catch her. I didn't have my camera right there ready at the time. I know, missed opportunity. Like, she was right there, and then just 20 feet to my right, Cat made her way around. I'm like, there she goes.
Were you there when Taylor fell at the dismount line?
I think I might have. I think I was there, but I didn't catch her
You're the one who
fall.
told me about it, so I think you did see that. And again, didn't have your camera out. Do we sense a theme here?
Well, that's because I'm trying to take pictures of you, not necessarily, Cat Matthews and Taylor Knibb.
Oh, well, they finished the bike like an hour before I do. There you have it.
I mean, Taylor Knibb put up a record-setting bike, and it's unfortunate that she lost. But I mean, if you're going to lose, that's the way to lose. I set a record on the bike, but I mean, Cat set the record for the overall race.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that twice in the last year.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's pivot. Talk about runDisney.
Okay.
All right. So runDisney races are harder to spectate than Ironman races.
runDisney races are a different animal.
They are so spectator unfriendly.
Yeah.
You almost have to try harder.
You really, to spectate a Disney race, you really have to be familiar with where that course is, and you have to know beyond that course, like what's there and what's around, just on a different level. So, being able to say, okay, if I catch the monorail, I've got X amount of time, and that's entertaining, because the first time I was spectating you were running the full. If you are not familiar with the areas of Disney and you are trying to follow somebody that is on the faster side, you might miss a few opportunities.
So what are those opportunities? So you've spectated the marathon 2 or 3 times now. And, we go to Disney quite a lot over the last however many years. I mean, I've been a pass holder for over a decade now. I don't know how long you have been, but at least as long as we've been together. And, so we know it pretty well. And I've been running the Disney races it's closing in on, it's over half a decade now. Closing in on a decade, I guess. So we know the routes. We know kind of thinking back to the first time you ran a race, I'm like, yeah, there's going to be a band there, and there's going to be music there. There's going to be, a marching band there. There's going to be a character there.
That was one of the funniest things, because I remember running that race and going through and coming around, and Jill said there's going to be a band there, and it's like you put an X right where they were supposed to be, and they were playing. Like you went by like way before I did. So I feel like you put the X there, you set the band up, and I was watching them as they were playing as they went by, and you're like, yeah, there's going to be a character here, there's going to be a band over there, and then there's going to be a DJ on this side.
Yeah, as I've gotten faster, I've actually been. It's a different experience, right? Running Disney when you're on the faster side. Those running from like the A corral, maybe the faster half of B, we don't get to see some of the stuff because it's not out yet. The characters, they don't really expect people, on the faster end to be stopping at characters.
Yeah.
And, so they're less prepared for it. Sometimes the character's out, but the photographers aren't out yet, or the photographers are standing around twiddling their thumbs waiting for the character to show up.
I've heard that the A Corral race is a different race compared to even just like a B Corral race. Like, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to start at the front of B.
It is, and even like the front of A versus back of A is different. But I've gotten used to the marching band not playing when I go by, and it's so disappointing because like that first marching band is at like mile 2-ish coming out of the start. They're always there, and it's always so fun to run by them, and they're playing, and then then when
Yeah.
they're like still setting up, it's like, oh man.
Yeah, it's fun. It's one of those things where it's nice to have that little like marker. Like I remember like there's the off ramp and then you have the DJ. It's like, okay, yeah, I remember where we are. That's right. It's a long highway run from here. And then you just have to, sit there and just, click off miles. And that's when you have that like, little internal monologue. Like, why are we here again?
Right. So, one of the questions I see a lot on the runDisney forums, mostly of which are on Facebook, especially as we get towards the race, is like, okay, well, how do I spectate? And the answer, unfortunately, is you don't, for the most part. Like the 5K, as a spectator, you get to see people start and finish, and that's about it.
Yeah, for the
it's
5K,
like
it's
entirely
that
in the
loop
park.
around Epcot, and that's it.
Right.
So you're not going to beat somebody that's running and you're walking. That's not happening.
Yeah, and the 10K is kind of similar too, because even though it does pop out of Epcot, right? So it has the highway start.
Yeah.
Right. It starts in the parking lot, and then kind of does the 180 out onto the highway, and then it loops around, and around the 5K mark, it comes back into the park.
Yeah.
So like you can kind of spectate like the start. You can see them, the runners come down the bus.
Yeah, down the bus
circle.
chutes. And
Right.
that's one of those things where that's what I'm saying. Like if you know the area and you know where the course is, you can kind of pick up those opportunities where it's like, they're going to come down the bus circle. Okay. And then they're going to go this way, that way. And then I just have to go this way. Fine. You can play that race and come out ahead on that and actually see your athletes on both ends of that.
Yeah. Now the only thing you have to be aware of, right, is the distance between the start and where the bus chute, as you called it, is not very far, right? It's like a 5-10 minute walk, maybe 10-15 minute walk, but you have to go through security again, going back in.
Yeah, you could also do the bus chute at the front of Epcot and then make it back over to the Gamora parking lot where the finish is. You can do those and you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, my point was,
yeah, security can be tricky for a Disney race.
Yeah, my point was, I've seen people kind of get surprised that they have to go through the security checkpoint multiple times because you're kind of entering and exiting the secure zone.
Yeah, but I mean,
and like, they get stuck in some lengthy lines, especially if your runner is on the slower side.
Yeah,
you might get stuck in the same line that like early entry for the park is going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was Disneyland when you did the Dopey to Dumbo. There was a race that I bounced back and forth in a couple of spots twice. And one of the security guards, he's like, I have checked you out. He's like, I have checked your backpack. I'm like, yep, I am so secure today. I should get a gold sticker so that way I can be like,
Did he give you a gold sticker?
I did not get a gold sticker, no.
Did you get a Disney sticker at least, like the circle one?
It was a Mickey Mouse sticker I got.
It was a Mickey Mouse sticker.
Yeah, it was a Mickey Mouse sticker.
All right. Well, I mean, at least it wasn't like a DVC sticker.
No, it was an official Mickey Mouse sticker. Like I was officially secure for the day.
So, anyways, I think for like the Disney races, the most spectator friendly race seems to be the half marathon versus the marathon. It's like the marathon. From a runner's perspective, it's cool, right? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of highway, but there's a limited amount of like park space to run through.
Yeah.
But it's like, you run through all the parks, but as a spectator, you'd have to figure out how to get to the parks. And like getting from Epcot to Magic Kingdom isn't that big of a deal because you have the monorail.
Yeah, Epcot to Magic Kingdom that's the quick one. Because,
right.
I mean, you can go from Epcot to Magic Kingdom. Like, I see you off at the at the start, and I immediately hopped the monorail.
Right, but anywhere else you need a car.
Oh yeah, there's
because
no chance to get to like Animal Kingdom easily.
Right, between road closures, the fact that you really can't walk anywhere, at Disney that's not in the park.
Oh yeah.
And all the transportation, because it's so early, is shut down, or a lot of the walking paths that do exist are shut down because the race runs over it, like the walking path between Epcot and Hollywood Studios, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't walk on that as a non-athlete because it's part of the course, and
Right.
it's, at least for the middle of the pack and the back of the pack is very congested, right? I've heard horror stories on how congested it is.
Yeah.
So like spectating there, I've heard of people being able to see their athlete in every park, and I'm like, how? I could see like
I'm
Magic
curious to know how
Kingdom.
they do that.
Yeah, like I could see, going from the start to Magic Kingdom, and then from Magic Kingdom to Animal Kingdom. Like I could see that working because, from the time that you as the athlete leave, I mean, now it's TTC on the exit because they reversed the course. But from the time you exit there to the time you're in Animal Kingdom, that's like 8 or 10 miles.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's one of those little hidden spots is remember that you actually can see everybody running just at the TTC. Not many. I feel like the last race, I didn't see many people spectating at the TTC, and I was wondering, like, how many people know that spot right there?
I think it's because the course was reversed this year. We're used to going from Epcot down the highway and then going to TTC and then counterclockwise around, Seven Seas Lagoon through, past, Contemporary into the bus, the bus parking lot, and then through Magic Kingdom, and then it pops out the other side to Hollywood or to Grand Floridian, and then continues its way past Holly and on back out onto the highway. And this year it was like the opposite, right? Obviously it came down the highway, but we didn't run through the toll booths, which is always disappointing when you don't get to run through the toll booths because I love that picture.
Yeah, that's a good spot. Yeah.
Yeah, it hangs to the left there where the road winds and goes, up to up past the TTC parking lot and straight to Grand Floridian, and then we pop at Grand Floridian over to the new walking path that goes around Seven Seas Lagoon, and then run that into Magic Kingdom, and then we run out and kind of reverse, through, past the Contemporary and into TTC. And then from TTC, we got the grand tour of the parking lot. there's like 4 or 5 miles in the parking lot. It's kind of boring. I'll take a residential development any day over another tour of the TTC parking lot. But, I think maybe that's like what you're seeing is like, everyone is still in Magic Kingdom waiting for their runner, where before they could be at TTC, see their runner, get on the monorail, make it over to Magic Kingdom before their runner does.
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. Like, I don't know how many people are aware that there's that one spot right there. It's kind of tucked off to the side, but it's a good viewing spot, and there weren't many people the last time I was there, so you get a great view. I remember you were surprised that I was there.
Yeah, I was surprised that you, from a timing perspective, were able to make it from one to the other. Yeah, because you saw me in Magic Kingdom, and it's only like 2 miles. Although the route through Magic Kingdom has gotten longer, right? It was like a half mile or a quarter mile longer this year than it was in the past. But even so, from when you exit Magic Kingdom to when you get into TTC, it's only like 1.5 miles. It's not super far. Like that whole loop is only like 5 or 6K.
Yeah,
and then I could see I could see how you could get from there, which absolutely do not drive into the TGC. Like the road is shut down. It will take you a police escort to get out of there.
With Disney, you really have to plan your next spot. So while you're spectating and you're waiting for your athlete, like you're looking at the map and you're figuring out how to get to your next spectating.
But I could see taking the monorail back to Epcot and then
Well, you're that speed where it's like, yeah, that's what I have to do if I'm going to make it there.
Well, I don't think you have an option. And I don't think there's another way that time of day to get back to Epcot, but you take the monorail back. I could see someone, especially if like you're in like CDEF, being able to get in the car, drive over to Animal Kingdom and see your runner. Cause
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
you could totally do that. And
because we
come out
enter
of
Animal Kingdom around the 30K mark, but we're exiting TT around what? Like the 15K mark. So like you've got some time, and depending on the speed of your runner, you might have like 2 hours.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm saying like knowing your runner's pace and being familiar with how they are and how they're doing, that's a big thing that really helps you figure out how much time you have.
Right. But getting from Animal Kingdom, like if you're spectating, so you got to get in the park, which means you have to have a park ticket. And if you're a pass holder, also a park reservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, the park is open. And,
yeah. And you have security and,
Exactly. The park is open. Faster runners don't get to ride any of the rides because the rides don't open until the park opens. But, slower runners, they may choose to ride a ride, suck up more time.
I think for spectating Disney, it would be handy if like spectators had like electric scooters to get around.
Just what Disney needs, more scooters.
Just a little like 2-wheel scooters. You just see like a whole army of them going from place to place. Like, where are we going? Magic Kingdom. Where are we going? Epcot. Where are we going?
Spectating by Segway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, going from there, I see the question like, well, could we see them in all 4 parks? I'm like, at that point, you kind of have to choose. Like, do you see your athlete at Hollywood Studios, or do you see them at the finish line? Because you're not going to see them in both places.
Yeah. There's a certain point where you're going to have to. I mean, can you do it? There's a certain point where you're going to have to find your bail point and say, okay, we absolutely want to see them cross the finish line. Okay, so how far is it from here? How much time do we have? And then, there's a certain point where it's like, okay, as soon as they go by, you're like, okay, cool. We got to move. We got to go. There's absolutely no time. There's no dawdling or anything. But you do have to have that kind of that set ripcord moment where you're like, all right, we gotta like abandon plans and go back this way,
Yeah, I sometimes think that spectating is more work than the actual run itself. Or maybe not more work.
Depends on the course.
Maybe not more work, but more stress for sure.
And that's why I say it depends on the course. It really does.
Yeah. So I think what we determined is Disney can be spectated for the longer races, but it's still a pain in the rear. Where like the typical Ironman or foot race, is maybe you don't see your athlete all that much, but it's easier to find your athlete. So one of the questions I had is, so now that you've, kind of been there, done that with these longer races, I know a lot of people volunteer at like T1 and volunteer, while their athlete is out on course at aid stations. Is that something you're going to start doing?
I could see myself doing that at different races.
Get yourself a pink shirt and some latex gloves and start handing out waters.
Yeah, I could.
Or you could be a wetsuit stripper.
I don't know if I have the talent to pull that off. I have seen wetsuit peelers that are like, they're Lake Placid last year. There was this one woman, she was snapping people out of wetsuits. I swear she was going to snap somebody back in the water with how hard she was sending them. Like some of these people just like, they laid down. They didn't even realize they were out of their wetsuit. They were checking that they actually had clothes on when she was done. The wetsuit peeler.
So, it's funny you mentioned that, there's people who you wonder, they're such effective wetsuit strippers that the person that they're taking the wetsuit, like it looks like they might fly back into the water. I actually know a few people at the last few races I've done who lost their timing chip to the wetsuit
totally
stripper.
See that happening.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. That's why your timing chip has to be under the wetsuit.
Yeah. And that's why you go with that extra safety pin.
That's why I always put a safety pin on it. And I tell everyone that'll listen, put a safety pin on it. It's just like a little bit extra insurance. And, I was talking to someone the other day that, they didn't even have a wetsuit on and they still lost their timing chip in the water.
Jeez.
Yeah, I guess someone had whether on purpose or not, had grabbed their ankle in the
I
swim.
was going to say, you've said that. I mean, from the sprint that I did, the swim is a mosh pit. So,
especially in a sprint.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that I could see that happening. Like somebody just tearing at your ankle and just having it come off.
Yeah, I think in the fulls, it's not as bad for the most part. If it's in a lake or a river, like the canal at Texas was pretty congested because it's not that wide and you have, 2,000, 3,000 people trying to make their way through. But,
yeah. I remember Atlantic City, I got punched, I got kicked in the side, and I was like, and you can't stop because, you're swimming.
Well, I mean, you can, but it's not going to help you.
Yeah, but you don't get to pause and stand up a second and be like, ow.
I don't know. The one in Atlantic City, you can probably stand up in most of the swim.
Yeah, but
it's pretty shallow there.
Don't want to.
Yeah. You don't know what's on the bottom and what disease you're going to get from it.
Yeah.
But and it's Atlantic City. I mean, getting punched and kicked is just kind of very on brand there.
Well, it's Jersey.
It's Atlantic City. All right. So we talked a lot about spectating, and kind of what I'm getting from this is like it really comes down to one, the athlete's guide and what's the course design, and then
figure out what the course looks like. Try and pick your spots ahead of time. Get familiar with the area. If you show up a couple days early, try and get the lay of the land kind of thing.
But also, like the speed of your athlete is a factor too. Like if they're slow, you might actually be able to see them more than if they're on the faster side, depending on the design of the course.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Right. And then, on these long courses, figuring out like how do you stay entertained.
Don't be upset if you miss the athlete that you're looking for, and, take in what's going on around you. Like, you see the races that all these pros are doing, and, these people are in it for, a pot of money at the end. So, take a look at what they're doing, and, they're setting records left and right. I like watching their races, and, also checking out what's going on. I like cars and stuff. So it was like, you look at the bikes and stuff, it's like, what are they running? That's interesting. How did they get that set up? What is that piece that they're using?
I always find transition interesting, and
the bikes. It's like the pits at a car race kind of feel.
It really is, especially, I was going to say especially the pro area, but it's not limited to the pro. Like in the the faster age groupers, like there's some pretty innovative, expensive setups.
Oh yeah, it's a big endurance event that's going on. So like, cars, I sit there thinking of think of it like the 24 hours of Daytona, and everybody's gearing up, and they're setting everything up, and you find some entertaining stuff. Like people sit there and they're like meticulous about carbon fiber this, carbon fiber that, and then you sit there and you watch like when they're staging and racking their bikes and everything. You're looking around, all of a sudden when they're sitting there worried about the weight savings and all of the carbon fiber and everything, you would be surprised, because I mean, you're sitting there setting up your bike, you don't see it necessarily as much as I do, but I see so much duct tape and zip ties. Like it is truly like, it's like everything's out the window. We got a race, and then all of a sudden it's like this big roll of duct tape comes out, and you got zip ties, and like, yep, we need it to work. That's how it's going to work.
I do find, so like as an athlete, I do find it entertaining because you'd be on course, and like on the swim, I'm okay, right? Like I'm definitely not in one of the like survive the swim camp.
No.
But it's not my best sport. I think cycling is my sport and everything else is second. But I've gotten faster over the last 2 years on the swim. but I'm still in like the front third, but like the back of the front third. So on the bike, run into transition and out of swim start or swim finish, most of the bikes are still there. So you get on course and when you pass someone, it's like, one in a triathlon, you don't really know if that person is in front of you or behind you because you don't know when they started the swim.
Mhm.
But, I've seen people like in Chattanooga, right? Well, that's a bad example because that didn't have a swim this year. But I've been out there when you see guys out there on their bike and you're like they're like it's a Sunday stroll, and I'm like, how did you get this far in front of me? And it looks like they're getting ready for like a 7-part meal on their bike. There's so much food
I've
attached
seen that.
to it.
I've seen that on that top tube. I have seen. I didn't count them. I should have. I might have took a picture of it, but there was just like taped gels the length of the tube from the headset all the way back to the seat. There was just a whole. I don't have no idea how many there were, but I was like,
yeah. I mean, it's pretty common to tape the gels, but
yeah. But I mean, there had to be like 25 or something. It's some.
Yeah, especially in like a half, you expect to see maybe like 6.
Yeah,
tops.
this was like they were stacked just all the way back.
Stacks of them.
It was like they were just nested over each other.
Sounds like someone was a little nervous they weren't going to have enough fuel.
Maybe.
I mean, the downside of that is you get on the run and your belly is going to pay for all that fuel that you took in on the bike.
Yeah, that's one of those worries because like you're in that position on the bike and then like as soon as you step off, it could be bad.
Yep. Most definitely. Yeah, especially on like the longer races, gut issues are hard to diagnose sometimes.
Oh yeah, like, I've seen plenty of people like just totally lose it on the run, and they're just like it was. I remember still Lake Placid last year. Some of the runners, they just like they were running, and all of a sudden, like there was this one out and back that we were spectating at, and some people just ran the court and they just laid down right there. Like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going any further. You can't pay me to go any further. And I literally saw an ambulance back up and just cart people away. I was just like, yeah.
I've seen a few of those. I've seen a few medical emergencies on course, usually because of like overheating.
Yeah.
The most triathlons are in the summer, the hotter months.
Yeah.
And if you're not hydrating properly, then you're going to overheat.
Yeah.
And I have seen a few people get carted off with, heat exhaustion where they've just kind of reached that point where their body is like, I can't do this anymore. And
yeah, that's one of the big things that you taught me early on was that to just make sure that you try to give yourself like a regimen of what to do and how often to do it at, because if you notice it, it's probably too late at that point.
Yeah, by the time you notice it, it is definitely too late. Greg, I'm hoping you're listening since I know you don't like to hydrate. So anyways, John, thank you for coming on to discuss spectating. We talked about quite a range of topics from, marathons to Ironman and triathlons to runDisney, all very different things. And I hope that for our listeners, this was useful, or someone who it is useful for us. If it's useful for someone pass it along and tell them to listen to the episode. All right. Till next time. See ya.
Always so fresh, delicious, and nutritious, Eggland's Best Eggs fuel the body with 6 times more vitamin D, 10 times more vitamin E, and 25% less saturated fat compared to ordinary eggs. Visit egglandsbest.com to learn more.